Hey, Liz Taylor Magic here, reporting from my magical forest, and I want to do a book report on Eckhart Tolle's A New Earth, Awakening to Your Life's Purpose. And this book should be required reading for like every, I don't know, 6th grader. I think 6th grade would be good because you're not like taken down by the darkness of puberty and like beat down by the realities of the world yet, and your soul's still open and you have hope, but you're like kind of old enough to mentally comprehend. Like, it's not that difficult of a book if your like spirit is open. And I mean, I've had to read like the same page like 3 or 4 times sometimes, but that's just because it's just thick. There's so much. It's profound sentence by sentence, and each sentence can be so simple and straightforward, yet there's so much to take from it. So I think that every guidance counselor in America could be 1,000% more effective just by making this the year's project. If you can get every 6th grader to read this book in the course of a year and like kind of have like weekly talks about it or monthly talks or however often you do your guidance class, this could be a life-changing, and this could actually change the world. Because what this book is about, I know that like A New Earth might scare people that are evangelical or very religious, and they might think that this is New Age, woo-woo, it's all crazy, it's all up in the air, but it's really actually quite practical. And so what the book is about, first of all, Eckhart Tolle is a spiritual philosopher, and he's not necessarily identified with any specific religion. He has learned from, you know, many religions, and he's not choosing one over the other. He's all inclusive, and I think that this is good because it doesn't leave anybody out. And the universal truth that he gives is true for everyone. And he does talk about Jesus, but in a very learned way. It's not a preachy way. It's just a matter of fact, like, this is like a lesson that he was trying to get across, and this is, you know, maybe something that you should take away from this lesson that we aren't traditionally taught in a traditional church setting, because maybe this is at a level of like consciousness that not every pastor has just because he went to theology school. So he's not criticizing anybody, and neither am I. It's just like this is the way it is. So this book is about the ego, and if we can identify the voice of the ego and separate ourselves from it and feel like, this is a intense lighting coming in here, so if we can separate from our ego and be the observer of it, and we like call it out for what it is, and we're onto its tricks, then it really doesn't have as much power over us anymore. And this book, I would say, gives us an expanded, more mature, broader consciousness of what the ego actually is. I think at first glance, and the surface level of understanding for the average person of the ego is like when you say someone is egotistical or in their ego, you kind of automatically go back to that caricature of the ultra vain person driving the sports car who's like power hungry and money hungry and image, you know, conscious, and needs a lot of validation, and is probably insecure but acting like better than everybody or very arrogant. And that's not always what ego looks like. You can be every bit as egotistical as that arrogant man or woman if you are a total wallflower and live your life in complete fear, and you're too meek or shy to really speak up or live in your truth or say anything, you know? I'm trying to find a different place to sit. That frying is starting to hurt my butt. Okay, and my hand's getting tired, so I need to squat and like put my elbows on my knees. Okay, so the ego's voice is not unique for anyone. We're all dealing with the same bad car salesman. It's basically giving us all the same sad story, And no one is special or different in that regard. I think that some people are more, the less aware you are of the ego, the more in the grips you are of it. And there is some truth that some people are just naturally less egotistical because, I don't know, it's like a spiritual talent. And some people are much more egotistical because, I don't know, that was, I guess, the soul contract that they came to Earth, that they needed to go through a lot more to realize something sooner. I don't know. But basically, in this book, Eckhart does a reverse engineering of the ego, and he sort of sets up these different scenarios, the classic common scenarios where you're most like at the mercy of your level of awareness of your ego. And these are all the classic scenarios, like being employed, dealing with your boss or other coworkers, interacting with your friends, and innocent things they might say that you take the wrong way, or why parents project themselves onto their children so deeply, or why they are so affected by whether or not they have control over their children, or whether or not their children listen to them, like which that's a big one. I think that how much healing could happen between children and parents if the parents were more self-aware of where their motives are, and the children were more self-aware of like where their parents are coming from. I think the whole world could be different if we all realized that no matter who we're dealing with and whatever moment we're dealing with, we're basically all like these insane maniacs living and reacting to other insane maniacs who are out of our minds. Like, we're not in our right minds until we get into our right minds, and it takes work and awareness and consciousness to get there. So basically, most of us are just living at the mercy of our level of awareness in the moment. If you go into any meeting, any interaction with any person, and you assume that you're dealing with a scared child within that person, you start to perceive them with a lot more compassion, and you start taking them a lot less personally, because you're like, well, I know my scared child within, and this person has a scared child within, and even though they're the CEO of this big company and I'm asking them for venture capital, like, they're a scared child within somewhere, and they're trying to hang on for dear life, and so am I. And if I know that that's who I'm dealing with, it levels the playing field a lot, and you're not as intimidated by people anymore because you're not in that illusion. So what were the other points I was going to make a while back? Okay, so basic warning signs, red flags that the ego is the one talking. The ego is the voice of fear. The ego is the voice of scarcity. The ego is the voice of lack. The ego is the voice that says, oh, who am I to do this? Like, it's already been done. Or, I don't know. If I said that, I would get in trouble. Or, I can't wear that because, I don't have the perfect this. Or, the ego is illusions of grandeur as well as inferiority. I mean, it's actually, anytime you're placing a scalable value of greater than and less than on any person, you're in the ego, because we're all one, we're all equal, no matter what our economic stature is, no matter, what our religion, our color, our sex, our, any condition that is the physical doesn't have anything to do with our inner value or inner merit. We're all priceless beings. Sometimes we don't act so priceless. That could improve. There's room for improvement there. But yeah, so, anytime you're thinking, well, this person is more special than that person, or this relationship is more special than that one, or, putting those kind of labels on something is an indication that you're an ego. Fear that is, even fear that's trying to help you survive, a lot of times is, it means well, but it's irrelevant, and you're not necessarily in peril, but like your ego always wants you to feel like you're in peril, because anytime you're growing or expanding or becoming, more in alignment with your higher self, that means death to some part of you that is the small self and the shadows. So your ego is basically holding on for dear life, hoping that you will stay dumb and out of it and passive and small and afraid and feeling like you don't have enough, you'll never be enough, you're not good enough, you're too fat, you're too skinny, you're not skinny enough, I'm perfectly skinny, I'm lovable now because I'm skinny, You know, that's a good one. I had to, I even saw it coming. It was really unpleasant. I finally, after like my whole life of always struggling with like these like 20 or 30 vanity pounds, which like I've always been like in the health range, but my best, the way I feel the best, the way I look the best, and the way I feel, you know, the most confident, I feel like the clothes look the best on me and things like that, is at this like ideal weight. And I finally hit that ideal weight like a year ago. And it was really one of those things where that's where I felt like, oh, well, I'll really love and accept myself when I'm at this ideal weight. I know it. Like, I'll feel so comfortable in my own skin at that point. Yeah, well, that's when it's easy to feel comfortable in your own skin, when, you know, you're like got abs and no zits, duh. But I knew as soon as I got there, I was like, oh, fuck, like I'm attached to this form, and I'm now, the real joke is that the universe is gonna ask me if I can love myself even if I gained all that weight back. And sure enough, you know, I got into this like the best relationship ever with my true love, and he's always like, I love you no matter what. And I'm like, why are you saying this? Am I gonna be like Gilbert Grape's mom in like, you know, 3 months? I don't know what's happening here. Why do you keep saying that? And then he, you know, he's this great cook who's always cooking like these rich meals because he's French Cajun, and he's like thinks it's blasphemy to make brown rice. So yeah, even though I'm working out like the same amount, it's just like all these like extra carbs and like rich foods that I wouldn't have normally eaten like are part of my diet now, because that's what, like, I don't know, it's hard to say no because I'm in the South, and I mean, I like a fucking biscuit, like, you know, sue me. I'd rather have a fat thigh and eat a biscuit every once in a while than be a skinny person who misses out on the finer things like gravy. It's all balance. All balance. But anyway, so yeah, I know we gotta cut back, and I'm trying to get in more on brown rice, but that's might not die on that hill, I don't know. So yeah, so you know, you gotta prepare yourself, and I saw it coming a mile away, and I'm like, oh, I'm seeing these like pounds get back on me, and I'm like, oh, this is awful, because for once in my life, like, I feel like I still deserve to eat. Like, I still love myself. I still feel sexy. Like, I'm gaining this weight, but like, I don't feel ugly. I don't feel unworthy. And I'm like, this is what makes it dangerous, because it was like that drive of like, oh, you're nothing without, you know, it's not there anymore. And so I'm like, wow, this is literally healed. So I really don't need this lesson. And I don't think I've gained any more weight since I made that realization. But now it's like, well, I gotta get it off again. So that means I've gotta add jogging back to my routine. But yeah, so that's a lesson. That's like, okay, you know, you have to give up that attachment to form. And, you know, I might be able to love myself at the perfect weight, but can I love myself when I've self-sabotaged and gained it back? And the answer is yes, I do. I still feel sexy, still feel hot, still feel like a badass bia. Do I still want to weigh my ideal weight? Yeah. I mean, yeah, just legitimately. I just feel better in my clothes and, you know, all that. And I feel more like energetic and healthier when I'm at that level of fitness. So yeah, trying to think of anything else I can say on Eckhart Tolle's book, A New Earth. I mean, he doesn't go as much into fitness and body image as I just did, but I mean, that's, you know, you have to learn how to apply these universal lessons to your own life. Anything else I can say? I mean, he talks about the societal ego that we all have collectively, that we share, and this like is projected in these big grandiose stories that the world system tells us about stature and power and fame and glorifying celebrity, but also, you know, collective fears that we all have and collective defensiveness that we all have, and so it, you know, and like how we sort of like choose those kinds of things as Americans specifically. I mean, you know, there are other nations that also have like some real ego issues, but I think that there are some countries that are like really awesome that don't have those. Like Canada's very positive. Have you ever watched Canadian TV, like streaming it illegally, and then you get to like see their positive commercials that are like motivating and encouraging, and it's like, oh my god, like, can I go to Canada, please? Okay. You know, don't hang on to the past. be in the present. Your power is in the present, and this actually plays on, you know, the power of now. Like, that book was amazing too. So this is definitely, like, you should read A New Earth, and you should also read The Power of Now, because, you know, the only time that there is reality happening is in this moment. The past doesn't exist anymore. You should learn from it. You should reflect on it. You know, if you don't learn from the past, then you're kind of wasting your time. You're not really growing. But if you dwell on it, then you're also wasting your time and you're not really growing. If you're obsessed with the future, that's a waste of time too, because the future is not, it doesn't exist yet either. It's being constructed in this moment. And if you're not doing anything in this moment, then you're not really building yourself much of anything. So power's in the now. Don't dwell forward, don't dwell back. You know, you need a plan, obviously. You need, like, okay, this is my 5-year plan, or this is my week, you know, I'm gonna, you know, broad strokes, but be willing to not, you know, be loose, be spontaneous, you know, don't get too attached to any plan, because things can change. As we've well learned, those of us who work in production, it's good to have a plan, but don't get too attached to it, because nothing's gonna fly that day anyway, so everything's gonna change. All right. And resistance is futile, because resistance causes suffering, and there are truths and false parts of that. Like, obviously, you know, you can't, like, lay down and watch the government take over and, like, do horrible things to people. Not that kind of resistance. The kind of resistance that's like, oh, this long line sucks. I wish I wasn't waiting in this line. I'm getting so impatient. Like, you know, just, like, deal with it. Like, stare at something that, you know, like, watch that kid over there. He's